Thank you very much. So I have the pleasure to continue the discussion with Anna Longo. She's a philosopher, specialist in aesthetic, but also in metaphysics and epistemology. She was doing research and at the Sorbonne in Paris, and was teaching also in Los Angeles at the art school. And we invited her because she's the author of this very interesting book, which is entitled Le jeu de l'induction, automatisation de la connaissance et réflexion philosophique. And today is the second part of our short conversation about this book. In the first part, we discussed the main thesis of this book, which is which can be put like this, maybe. You showed in this book that the game theory, the mathematical game theory, so the mathematical attempt to analyze games, to formalize games, and to calculate the best strategies for games, that this mathematical game theory is the source for a certain understanding of what it is to be a rational agent, of what it means to produce knowledge, of what it is to be intelligent. And this conception, this certain conception of rationality, dominates many of today's discussion, and especially the debate around the possibility of intelligence, artificial intelligence. So this is the main story you tell in this book, and we already you already explained that this conception of intelligence, which dominates the discourse about artificial intelligence, as a key concept, the concept of information. So to be intelligent, to be rational, to produce knowledge means to produce information, and in particular, information that allows to predict events in order to make choices that allow one to maximize your utility, to make the, let's say, the most useful choices, whatever that means. And this complex of information prediction and utility is, let's say, the conception of information that goes back to the theory of games and which dominates the contemporary discourse. Now you articulate a critique of this narrow conception of what it is to be intelligent, and you say that there needs to be a more inclusive, a larger, a richer conception of what it is to be intelligent, and there the notion of the aesthetic enters in your thought and your project. So today's conversation, we will look at, stop the analysis and the critique and look at the second part of this endeavor, which is the idea, how could the aesthetic knowledge, aesthetic experience somehow be part of a more rich conception of rationality? So maybe we start with you explain that. What would you say? What is the main difference between knowledge as information and the kind of knowledge which would be the knowledge of aesthetics?
Thank you, Christoph, for this introduction and for this question. Thank you for being here. Is it working? No, it's working. Yes. Sorry. Okay, so I was thanking Christoph and the public for being here. So yes, in the book I made this difference between rational knowledge or logic knowledge and aesthetic knowledge as two complementary kinds of knowledge. So we can say that artificial intelligence is good in producing rational knowledge, which means that it's able to predict the behavior. So in a game, we said yesterday, players have to predict each other's behavior in order to play an appropriate strategy. So the idea is to play the best strategy with respect to the expected strategy of the adversary. So artificial intelligence is very good, for example, in predicting our decisions and in playing the best strategy with respect to our decisions. This is a form of knowledge which is based on information. So in order to do that, it's a sort of ontology, which is an ontology where everything is an information pattern. So we are information patterns. But we are information patterns that there is a sort of sequentiality. So if I receive some information, I will act in some way, will respond in some way. So my action, my reaction is information. So I receive information and I release another kind of information. So for the algorithm to predict my behavior, my decision, what is important is to understand, to predict what will be my reaction when I receive some piece of information. So this is a certain kind of knowledge. So there is an hypothesis about the kind of pattern of information that I am in order to make predictions about my future decisions. So everything in this kind of ontology is a pattern of information. Everything is information, and information is what has a value also, no? Because it's so the idea is that a pattern of information is not just one singular person, but it's statistical, no? So the idea is to have basic models for behavior of categories of actors or categories of agents, which are classified. So this kind of knowledge is statistical. It works with probabilities. So the idea is how many, what category of consumers, for example, will react in some way when some advertising is received. No, this is statistical. It's a kind of knowledge which is useful in some way. We can criticize it, of course, but it's economically useful. But the idea is that a real knowledge of people, of actors, of things, no? The idea is that we cannot conflate this kind of knowledge with the other kind of knowledge, which is the aesthetic knowledge. No? And I think that when we are in this other kind of knowledge, which is aesthetic knowledge, we do not consider large categories of patterns of information, but any singular person or any singular thing is unique. Being unique means that we consider a sort of totality of information, all the information that makes something that something and not something else. So I think that it goes in another direction. So this knowledge, which is based on information, goes from the particular to the general. The aesthetic knowledge goes in the other direction, so from the general to the singular. So we can say that we know somebody or that we know something when it appears for all the information, all the details, all the qualities that makes this thing and not something else. Which is a totally useless kind of information, meaning that I cannot do nothing. See, if I know one thing very, very well, it's not practical at all in my everyday life because I know just one thing and I cannot use this paradigm to do other things. But on the other side, there is a kind of richness of this knowledge that makes of one thing just an ephemeral thing, an ephemeral event. And being unique and being ephemeral means also that it's a value which is forever, because it's just once it's ephemeral, it cannot be repeated just once, totally useless in practical life. But it's kind of forever because it happens just once. Whereas information, it's always rapidly obsolescent, no? For example, the weather forecast of yesterday is not useful the day after, no? So information is something which is useful at a certain moment, then we can forget it. Whereas this aesthetic knowledge is a knowledge which is ephemeral, which is just one thing, a unique thing, but it can be eternal.
So, if I understand you correctly, this completely useless aesthetic knowledge of singularity is opposed to information in that sense that information is always somehow general in order to be useful. And in the book, you try to connect this contrast to the contrast between two kinds of games or playing, which Gilles Deleuze calls the normal game and the ideal game. And where the normal game is classically the object of mathematical game theory, and the ideal game would be somehow connected to this aesthetic knowledge of singularities.
Yes, of course.
What would that be, this other game?
Yes, but Deleuze starts from the idea that an artwork is not information. So art has nothing to do with information. So it's not information. But it has something to do with an act of resistance. So if we consider the ideal game as a critique of the games, we can say that we are in a system currently or everyday life, like interacting with algorithms, for example, in platforms and whatever. So we are in a game, we are within a competition, within a game where everybody has to maximize its utility. And it seems impossible to get out from this game, no? Because anything we do is a sort of strategy within the game. And even though we innovate, we introduce new strategies, we actually introduce new strategy within the game. So the game will evolve, no? It's a game which evolves very rapidly also today because of technological innovation. So it seems impossible to introduce new rules without contributing to the evolution of the same game. So the problem of Deleuze is how do we get out, no? So this ideal game is a way of conceiving the game like this global system, like a game which is a game within which rules can change. But the idea is to produce another kind of process. So the ideal game is to bet on the possibility of producing or getting or originating another process rather than the process within which we usually bet or we usually act or we are usually involved. So it's a game for which we cannot use probabilities, no? Because it's from within, so from a rational or logic point of view, there is no meaning, no, in betting for another. It's like we are playing chess, and we are saying, okay, my next move will be a move outside chess. It doesn't make any sense, no. So I bet that the chessboard will be destroyed. No, it's not a good move for a chess player. But the ideal game is to think outside, no, the game.
And the last question before I open to the public, to the discussion, did you somehow observe and experience at this festival the different games and artworks you've seen? Something like this idea of a nonsensical ideal game disrupting our normal game like calculating behavior.
I think that it was a very creative festival in the sense that it was not producing innovation for the main system or the main game itself, but it was full of experiments or experimentation, like connecting things in different ways, and to produce something which was kind of unique, no? I think that. So thinking, for example, of the works of the students, the performances, it was a very great kind of experimentation, trying not only to subvert the rules, but to invent the possibility of new kind of games, no?
So you talk about the yesterday evening's concert at the Jazz Campus where the different students from the improvisation class.
So yes, I was really impressed by the students and the way in which they are really experimenting and trying to use the games not in a competitive way, but in a creative way, you know? Just if they could bring everybody into another kind of dimension, no? Like calling for another kind of society, so we can organize different, you know. So this idea of the collaboration among them, with a way where there was no hierarchy between them, there was switching roles, and it was really interesting, this proposal for interaction in some way, no? And I thought it was really interesting and really creative, no? Like calling for new ways of connecting and organizing.
So are there comments and questions to this? We're only sketching out what's in these ideas of Anna Longe. Or maybe also impressions from your side, from the different pieces and projects I've already seen in the last 2 days at the festival, how this could connect to this idea of having games of different sorts. That there is a certain game that is completely adapted and conform to the, let's say, a kind of economic coercion installed, and another game which interrupts this.
Maybe I just mentioned like I enjoyed a lot this piece I don't know the last banks where it was these numbers where the audience tried to find a solution to play them all together, and for me it was really great, the only like really proper game on this festival now, like the kind of perfect situation where individually but also collectively there was a feeling of okay, we could solve it. Maybe one will do it, but everybody is thinking in this direction, and it was like in the air there was this huge challenge of doing it, but also it really easy when it happened and everybody planned. So it was really like wonderful sonic game.
Well, I liked it as well very much, but I would say it doesn't really fit Deleuze's idea of an ideal game, because the idea of having a solution in a game is strange to this idea of a nonsensical interruption of the ungoverned behavior.
Yeah, no, it was a solution, but it also was not a solution, meaning that I cannot use the information that I received from that game in order to to make financial speculation, for example. It's not relevant information. But it's also something which is unique, meaning that it was a whole performance, it was a whole situation. It will never repeat the same way. And there is also no point in trying to predict when it will happen again, because probably it will never happen again. No, so it's not information which has a value within the general game, but it's an enormous collection of information that we got as an experience, which is maybe too much to be useful. So there's no selection, and it's pointing to something which has another value. So it's not the value of a knowledge or rational knowledge, but it's the value of an aesthetic knowledge. So we say, yes, it worked. We have idea, but it was coherent. There was some truth within it, even though it's not a truth or a knowledge that we can use in practical life. But we had the impression that it was saying something true. So it's an aesthetic knowledge in this sense.
Sorry, I think there was another.
So thank you very much. I will try to pose a question. I was very fascinated by the idea, the very radical idea of singularity, as you pointed out, as something which is so ephemeral that it is forever. So I was thinking about the connection between this concept of singularity connected with the game theory. You pointed out that in the normal game spoken with the Deleuze, there is predictability, Vorhersehbarkeit, and you say predictability. And I was thinking probably this predictability is based on knowledge from the past, something which is already there, somehow like conventions, like possibilities, like the weather forecast, for instance. Very good something. What about the singularity? Is it predictable? Is it possible to put it in a game theory in a way that if it is so radical, singular, is it predictable? This was my question.
No, it's not. I mean, we can predict only things which repeat, but things that do not repeat cannot be predicted. Something just once. I cannot. So, in order to use probability, we need a frequency, a past frequency, or at least the idea that something is possible. There is contained in a set of possibilities. But I think that it's not just really to see if something repeat or does not, because in some way we can say, okay, nothing never repeats, no? So even though we consider that a storm is occurrence of storms, like there are thousands of storms, etc., we also can say that no storm is equal to another one, no? But then it depends on the kind of knowledge that we are applying, no? So if I'm using rational knowledge, and I have a weather forecast telling that there is a storm arriving, what is rational is to protect my house, for example, to take some measures and to act in some way, no? Which is rational answer to avoid damages, no? So to maximize utility, no? And this is our way of considering the storm as an example of storms, no? So I learned what it is, I learned what happens, and I try to make the best decision with respect to what I expect will happen, no? So to avoid damages. So it's an anticipation, it's a prediction. Then there is also the other kind of knowledge of a storm, which is the aesthetic one, but it's a way of switching, from one knowledge to the other. And I can say, okay, I look at the storm, I stay in the rain, and I love it, and I feel it, and for me it's just a unique experience, and I get from that so many kind of information, so many qualities, so many sensations, that it will be something that it cannot be repeated, but it's another way of approach. So I think that we have both the knowledges. There is a complementarity in the human mind, in the human spirit, for both. What for me is a kind of frustrating is that when we are talking about artificial intelligence, it's like there is only rational knowledge, only rationality, and aesthetic knowledge does not exist. So, of course, artificial intelligence can be better than us in rational learning, in rational knowledge, because it can treat a lot of information very quickly, etc., and to produce good decisions, not to suggest us maybe the decision to be made. But it's totally incapable of the other kind of knowledge, of the aesthetic knowledge. So I think that we cannot just consider that the wall of reason is rationality, it's irrational knowledge.